everyone. I'm Kathryn Soley, and this is 1-800-CALL-KATHRYN. Welcome to the show. So, let's just jump right in and hear from our first caller.
Hi, Kathryn. So, about a year ago, my 8-year relationship ended, and I've recently come to learn that he was cheating on me for about the last 8 months of the relationship. He's actually still seeing the same woman, but has never admitted to me that anything is going on with them at all, even after we broke up. I've come to accept that I'm never going to get the admission of infidelity from him, but my issue at this point is that I haven't been able to process the betrayal retroactively. But having this come to light kind of shifted things around for me emotionally, and I'm left with this very unsettled feeling that I can't figure out. Like, I just have this sort of pent-up energy about the situation that I don't really know where to direct it. So anyway, if you have any insights or advice about how I can move through this, it would be really helpful. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, that's a hard one. It's an interesting thing as a reader is when someone comes to me and asks for a reading about something, whether it's on the show or, through my website or whatever, my mind, this is the advice I would give to my friend. This is what I think, and I have to hold back on it because the cards are different. The cards I think are just a lot more accurate. It's a lot more like what the person probably needs mirrored back to them than my opinion. Which it can be kind of a hard thing as a human being to do, is to hold back on your opinion and to surrender to anything, surrendering to the cards. So it's hard for me to hold my tongue, but we'll see what the cards have to say. Okay, so we have the 8 of Wands, the Queen of Cups, and the 9 of Cups. So in tarot, there's the major arcana, which are cards like Death, the Tower, the Lovers, the Empress, the Emperor, Judgment, and so on. And then there's the suits, which are the Cups, Wands, Swords, and Pentacles. And these are all cards that are suits cards, and each suit has its own kind of themes that they work within. And so we have 2 of the cards are in the cups, and the cups are related to the element of water. I relate them primarily to themes around emotions, around our emotional life. And so it's not surprising to see emotional energies coming up in this reading. I even, I hear when I'm listening to your reading or to your question, to your message, I hear someone who's very, almost, I don't know if this is how you are all the time around this topic of this betrayal from your partner of 8 years, or if you just held it together really well for the message, but there's something very in your message that I heard was very put together, held together, matter of fact, this is what happened. But then at the same time, I'm hearing you say that you have this unsettled feeling, pent up energy. And so I I get the sense that there's a big feeling, like a big wave of emotion that wants to come through. And that can be, I don't know if you've had that happen yet. I'm sure that you've had, like, you've cried. I'm sure you've had all sorts of feelings come up around this. But is there like some sort of big release that is there, but that you might be holding back? You know, we can hold back feelings because it can be kind of scary to go towards really big feelings, to have really big feelings move through us. We lose control. I don't know if you've ever, there's different kinds of like cries that happen. The most intense cries for me, I always describe it as like my whole face, my whole body is crying. So it's not just like I have tears, it's like my whole face is like, all the muscles are just like emoting, and it's not putting it on, it's like something that's naturally being expressed through me. It's not me having like a tantrum or or sorry about that, someone, I'm recording on my phone and I forgot to put it on airplane, someone called. So it got cut off there for a second. But as I was saying, there may be some sort of deeper wave of emotion that is needing to come through at this time, or is wanting to come through at this time, beyond just like intellectually, this is what happened. This is, he was being selfish. He was, like the stories about this and that. There might be some just kind of like bigger expression, and it can come through crying. It might come through hitting a pillow. Usually though, any sort of like anger like that you're getting out, pushing, punching, whatever, it should lead to crying. Like it usually does lead into that. There's some, or shaking, or there's different ways that we can express, emote things. But there's also, we have the Eight of Wands here. When I see that in relationship to the rest of the reading, I just want to point to, if there's a part of you that is like trying to move quickly through this process, like that wants to get over it quickly, to be cautious of that. Understandably, a lot of the time people have big things happen emotionally and want to, sorry, I hear a cat sleeping. I don't have cats, but Sam, my partner's parents, sometimes when they go out of town, we watch their cats. And so I hear a kind of cat snoring. Just in a cabinet behind this bit in space here. But yeah, if there's a part of you that's moving quickly through this, that's like, understandably when things come up, we don't want to feel it. We don't want to feel that big wave. It's like, I think a lot of people give themselves permission to like do a little cry, to like give themselves a little bit like, or I'm angry, or like I'm pissed off, or I'm a little sad about this, but okay, then, but I'm not gonna let it bother me anymore. I'm gonna move on, and I'm ready to move on. I don't want to feel this anymore. But when you do that and you leave behind, something that's been unprocessed, something that's been unfelt, it's still there. It didn't go anywhere. You just covered it up with some sort of strategy. And so just, knowing, we have even, in the way that it's laid out, the Queen of Cups, very like mothering, very nurturing card in the deck. She's looking over to the Eight of Wands and feels like she's just like, okay, honey, it's okay. This might take some time. I would imagine that a betrayal like that, I don't know what your relationship with this person was like, but an 8-year relationship where they had an affair and then are lying about it, still won't admit to it. Very cowardly, by the way, very selfish thing, not only to have the affair, which is a selfish thing, but then to not be honest about it. That will take time to undo the wounding that brought with it. The other side to the Eight of Wands, and this is where I always come to with Eight of Wands, is it says don't rush, but it also says don't wallow. In my experience, when those big emotions move through, it happens pretty quick, when that big, it's like a big expression happens, and then you feel a lot better after. If you find yourself kind of just sad, or just a low grade kind of bad feeling all the time, then there's not really a process happening. Sometimes you have to hang out and in that area until you can get that big movement through. But anyway, so don't rush this, but be aware of stagnating in it as well. The Nine of Cups also, more specifically, there is a sense of satisfaction, of jubilance with it. And so it feels like just a reminder to remember, as you're moving through this process, the good things in life, that what happened to you with this partner does not need to repeat. It doesn't mean that everybody is a cheater, that, life is just, everyone is selfish and life is dark like this. There are a lot of good people. There's a lot of good in your life now, and to not forget that. So let's see what the Oracle has to say, the Oracle cards. This is the Usi Super Oracle deck. I end every reading. I'm gonna adjust this mic, actually, keep bumping into it. Gosh, sorry about this. All these technical things this episode. Okay, that's fine. This is the Usi Super Oracle deck. I end all my readings with a card from this deck, and pick a card from this deck to give us some guidance with the themes going forward from the first 3 cards. Oh, okay. This rarely happens, but sometimes 2 cards sneak out. And it never happens with the Oracle deck. I don't know that it's ever happened with the Oracle deck. Sometimes it happens with the Tarot deck. Okay, so you get a special double card. You got mysticism and gentleness. And the gentleness card, I think, has come up in quite a few of our readings here on 1-800-CALL-KATHRYN, and that's good. I like this card. So it's pretty self-explanatory. Be gentle with yourself through this process. It kind of harkens back to what we were talking about. Don't rush the process. Don't beat yourself up for struggling through this. If you have a hard time accessing that big wave that seems like it wants to come through, just be gentle with yourself through it. I always think about when I was a kid, there would be a bouquet of flowers on the table that my mom got, and the buds would be closed like this. And I wanted to see the flower. I didn't want to wait for it to open, so I would pull open the bud, thus killing, it won't open. And I had to do that a few times before I fully got the lesson. You can't force the flower to bloom open. Aries rising, conjunct Mars and Aries in my chart. Let's do this, let's get this done. And it's, it's the same thing with our own process. We can't force the flower to open. You can't force big emotions to come. There's been times in my life, the last year, I had a really difficult emotional process that I was going through. And it was frustrating to me because I just kept waiting. I could feel like, okay, at some point I know from my experience in the past that I'm gonna have some sort of big release around it, and then a breakthrough, and then I'm gonna feel better. But right now, in the moment, for like a year, I was in this thing and I was like, this doesn't feel good. I can't believe my mind is going back to the same thought it had yesterday. It's going back to the same pattern, the same thing that I've been kind of stuck in really since I was like a kid, this sort of repeating thing. But then eventually, about a month ago, I did have a breakthrough, and now it feels like I'm free of this thing to a large extent. There's still little bits in there that, I'm sure will pop up here and there, but a big piece of it, that I've been stuck with since I was a little kid. And I wished in the moment that I could have hurried that the hell up, but things take the time that they take. So throughout your process with this experience, just be gentle with yourself. And then I love both of these here, the mysticism card, having this in here as well. It just brings in this more mystical or spiritual aspect to this. So in last week's episode, or the last episode, there was a reading about where the theme of, things happening for you instead of to you came up. And I try to avoid that phrase because of a lot of the people, it's just lost. It's been misused, and so I don't want to be associated with that sort of thing. But there is a truth in that saying. I have no problem with that saying. It's just that it gets used by people to bypass things, to avoid things. But can you zoom out a little bit? Can you connect in with, see, everybody will use kind of different language around this. You could say your higher self or your spiritual nature. If you're a more religious person, it might be connecting with God, or connecting with the universe, or surrendering to God, surrendering to your spiritual path, leaning on that part of yourself will definitely be helpful through this process. So yeah, that's what I have for you, caller. Yeah, I wish you the best with this. It's a more common thing than you would think, the infidelity and betrayal. It's something that happens to a lot of people. So I know, you're not alone in this experience, and it's such a big thing culturally. It's something that, because we live in such a degenerate culture, it's a really common thing that happens. And so there's like a lot of cultural discussion around it, but what doesn't get discussed, the cultural discussion is like, that guy's no good, he's a scumbag, fuck him, and then, or like, that bitch is crazy, blah, blah, like, you're better off without her. But no one talks about that's just the surface. That's the absolute most surface aspect. And sometimes you do need to say that, you need to get, yeah. By the way, yeah, fuck this guy. What bothers me even more so is the not taking responsibility, not being accountable for it. That's so cowardly. That bothers me a lot. But But what doesn't get discussed is what's, underneath, like what that brings up for people. It's like brings up feelings of inadequacy, feelings of unlovability, a loss of trust in the world, feelings of abandonment, fear of, am I ever going to be loved again? Like it hits deep stuff, really deep stuff. And so that doesn't get talked about. And that's like important. That's an important aspect of this. So again, just being gentle. Caller, please be gentle with yourself and patient with this process. And things will get better. Not everybody is like that. Not everybody's going to do that to you. Okay, let's hear from our next caller. I have to go make another cup of tea. So I'm sorry to keep having blips in here, but I'll be right back. You won't even know that I'm gone. Okay, we're back, and let's hear from our next caller.
Hi, Kathryn. I'm so excited to call in. So I am in an interesting place currently with my work life where I need to make a decision, or I feel like I need to make a decision. I'm being encouraged to pursue higher education to advance my position and work. And my friends, family, and colleagues are all very encouraging of this, saying I have a natural gift and this is a path I should follow. I just know that taking this leap means a lot of commitment that I'm unsure that I'm ready for. So do I move forward, or do I linger in this easy place for a little bit longer and see what happens? I have never really been super career focused, and I feel like I actually do have a calling with what I'm doing now. I just am realizing I might be more of a commitment than I've realized. Just seeking guidance on that. I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks for calling in. So I will say, by the way, that this is the most common type of call that I've gotten for 1-800-CALL-KATHRYN so far. I've gotten so many, probably like 25%, maybe up to 35% of the calls that have come in are from people who have very similar work-related questions. And yeah, so if you've called in about something similar to this, know that you are not alone. I've been, if I could do like 5 episodes of just those work calls. So I may not answer everyone's specific questions, but it's definitely a common theme that people are working with right now. Which again, not surprising. Okay, what's my tea here? Nice Earl Grey, hot. Okay, so let's see what we have for you. Shuffle these cards here. I'm realizing I needed to make a second cup of tea. It's now dawning on me because right before I started to film the episode, I spilled my tea, part of my tea, and it got all over the deck. So I had to wipe down every single card. I don't mind getting a little tea stains on the card. It gives the deck a little bit of character, but they were all sticky and wet, so I had to wipe each one down. And I lost some of my tea in the process. All right, let's see what we have here. Okay, so we have the Queen of Swords, the King of Swords, and the Ten of Cups. And so our caller has a job where they're being encouraged to take a higher education position to advance their position, or higher education, or just to pursue higher education to advance their position. Everyone says you have natural gifts doing this, and you feel like you do too. That this is a calling that you have, but there's some commitment issues with the work, which is interesting. Yeah, even before I start saying too much for the caller, this does feel like a calling. This is a question to ask yourself. Does this really feel like a calling? Sometimes you can be good at something, but it's not what you want to be doing. You know, there are things that I'm good at that I don't want to do. Or does it feel like it's fulfilling? It feels like, yeah, this is what I'm meant to be doing. Yeah, I think that's something important to ask yourself. And sometimes it can be hard to think clearly around this. And if you're having trouble thinking clearly, well, we've got some help for you here. We've got both the Queen and the King of Swords. So, as I mentioned in the last call, there's the suits, and each suit has a theme. The theme of the swords is the mind. It's the way that we think. And so when we get to the Queen and the King, there's a certain higher level to it. You know, to me, the King is like, has mastery over the mind, where he's not cold. You know, if the King of Swords is out of balance, he becomes like this like robotic, this is what you do, this is what you should not do, that is illogical, you know, this inhuman kind of thing that a lot of us are weirdly to me, that sort of attitude is encouraged. If it's imbalance, that's so funny, imbalanced or imbalanced. If it is in balance, then the King of Swords has emotions, but does not believe that his emotions are facts. It doesn't mean that he doesn't take them into account, but he recognizes the place that logic and intellect have in decision making. He's a clear thinker. I love the King of Swords personally, and I think in certain circles at this time, people need this more. They need more of the King of Swords. You know, in the past, I was always like, we need to be feeling more, and we need more emotions and more emotional intelligence. And yeah, we really do. But there's also this like lack of intelligence, this lack of critical thinking, this lack of like clarity in the minds, this belief that because you feel something, that it's factual, that it's true, and it's just not the case. You can feel something and it's totally like something, like a trigger from a past, it's like a projection from a past experience, and it's not based in fact, based in this moment, based in reality. So there's this part of you, caller, that has access to this. So having both of these here, I almost want to ask you if you're a Libra. There's something about your call that feels like air signy. And when the air signs are out of balance, I have a lot of loved ones who are Libras, so I may be projecting this onto you, but they have, I mean, we got the commitment issues there, that can be part of it. But you know, when they're out of balance, they can't make a decision. They don't know what they want, they don't know what to do. But when they're in balance, they have that air, that the swords are related to the element of air too, and they can really like see all these different possibilities. Even if you're not a Libra sun, you know, it doesn't matter. It's just probably my own kind of projection. Maybe you have Libra elsewhere in your chart, but I have Mercury in Libra, so like my mind, I think it's why I can talk for so long and do these readings, and I can see like all these different possibilities. But in the past in my life, or even now in certain moments, I can see these different possibilities, and it can be hard to choose like which one is correct, what's the right way to go. But when that sort of quality is in balance, then you're able to see all these different possibilities, and you know what the right way to go is. And so in your situation, you know, you have this thing that it sounds like you believe that you have a gift for, that you say that it's a calling that you have. Other people reflect back to you that this is a gift. And so why are you having commitment issues with it? Where does that doubt coming from? Is your mind creating false possibilities? Is there a fear of being boxed in? Or is there a part of you that believes that this actually is not your calling? You know, can you see what you can do to get that mind clearer? Whoa, it's easier said than done. That's like, the kings to me are always kind of like advanced cards. It's an advanced practice, I think, to be in that state. And then we have the Queen of Swords, which in a lot of ways is similar to the King of Swords, but to me it's more of like a nurturing kind of aspect. It's a little bit softer than the King of Swords, but there is still this clarity of mind with that. And then we have the Ten of Cups, and the Ten of Cups is like, it's like this, you know, when it's in balance, it's, you know, just a beautiful card. It's that feeling when everything is in its right place. We feel fulfilled, we feel joyful, things are moving in the right direction, things are flowing in the right direction. And so, you know, with that, the King of Swords also, he's looking at the Ten of Cups. And so can you use your mind, use your intellect, that part of you that has that King of Swords energy, which we all have within us. Some people have a harder time accessing than others, but you have it here. Can that part of you, that King of Swords aspect, meaning the part of you that can think clearly and can see the different possibilities, but is able to weigh them and find the correct pathway, the correct answer, so to speak, can he bring his eye to what would make you feel most fulfilled? What would make you feel that like love of life? If it's this job, then you got to work on that commitment thing, that fear of commitment, because if this is what you're meant to be doing, if this is your calling, you can't let that tamper it for you or take you away from it. A lot of people get taken away from the things that they're meant to be doing because of fear, of different types of fear. But you're in a really good position already where you're already there. It's just, can you stay there? Of course, unless it's not your unless it's not your calling. If you are a Libra, I'm so sorry for giving you this reading because I'm giving you too many options. So let's pull an oracle card here for some guidance with these themes going forward. God, this happened again. 2 came. I'm telling you, this has never happened. And now we have 2 cards, 2 readings in a row where 2 cards came out. Interesting. Very weird. Okay, so we have a double card reading for you as well. We have Gnosis and Imagination. So when I see these cards in relationships with the rest of the reading, the Imagination card takes on kind of an interesting quality because I could see it as, you know, positively using the imagination for whatever, you know, your work is. I don't know if it is an imaginative field or not, I'm actually leaning more towards, are you using your imagination for evil? Not for evil, that's dramatic, but for, pulling you away from this, from, this objective kind of mind. Having the gnosis aspect involved as well, it brings in this more knowledge, this, I think gnosis might literally mean knowledge. I think that might be, it's like literal translation, but it's not the knowledge of like 1 + 1 = 2, and that's not very impressive knowledge. But it's not facts that you've memorized. It's like a more deep inwards kind of knowledge, like a knowing. And so, can you combine this clarity of mind, finding something that brings you joy, again with this gnosis, with this deeper sense of who you are, sense of your purpose in life, and you could even say like connecting with a more kind of spiritual side of yourself. Okay, caller, that's what I have for you. I feel like I've been saying this a lot in our readings here, but it's gonna be fine. I try never to say that in readings, but it feels like there's nothing in the reading that I'm like, I feel worried about you or something. I think you're doing fine, and you probably already know everything that I just said. It just, maybe you just needed it reflected back to you. So let's hear from one more caller today. Okay.
Hello. So my question is about depression. I am taking herbal and other kind of supplements to help on a physical level, and I'm considering medication as well. I was wondering if, other than these paths, if there's something that could additionally help, or maybe what other than the physical is playing a role in the depression, and what is it telling me? What could I change about my life to ease it? So that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Depression. Who's in that boat? Who's in the depression boat? It's so if you're not depressed in the way that things are in the world right now, you're in the minority. It's it's hard to look out into the world and see everything going on, and then see how it affects our lives individually. To not feel depressed like that. This is another one of those topics where I have a lot of thoughts. As someone who's navigated depression a lot in my life in the past. But we're gonna leave it up to the cards today. Let's see what the cards have to say here. Okay, so we have the Tower, the Knight of Pentacles, and the Three of Wands. Okay, so the Tower card is one of the cards that I'm most connected to in the deck. The Tower card is one of those cards that people fear, but usually they fear it because of the way that it's depicted in the Rider-Waite-Coleman-Smith deck. It looks really scary in that deck, and I think this is a large part of why I stopped using that deck. And when cards are portrayed as either really positive or really negative, it says more about the artist or the architect of the card than it does about the card itself. And so that's why I like this deck, because it's so neutral. When you're learning how to read tarot, the Rider-Waite-Coleman-Smith deck, it can be easier because it is so like pictorial, but it's too easy to project on. And you can see in this deck, I'll show a side-by-side of this deck and the Rider-Waite-Coleman-Smith deck, big difference in the way that these cards are depicted. It doesn't look that scary in this deck to me. It almost looks kind of like, you know, it's confetti, like that. But, you know, the Tower card comes up in times in our lives where we're going through a big change, when we're going through, like, our sense of self, our sense of identity is shifting dramatically. You know, maybe we've been going about our lives thinking like, this is who I am, this is where I'm heading in life, this is the career I'm going to follow. You know, I don't know how old you are caller, but you know, I've gone through times where I remember this one day. So I've always been on the fringes, so to speak. There was never any part of me that like thought I'm gonna end up working in an office or something like this. I always knew I was gonna be doing like weird stuff ever since I was a little kid, and never lost that. Like, that's just been with me always. And I remember this one day I was driving to my job working at a restaurant, and all of a sudden it hit me, and I was like, I'm never gonna work in an office. It was like this idea had been deeply ingrained in me, like deep, like unconscious, because both my parents work in an office. So it was like on some deep unconscious or subconscious level, I believed that like that's what you do, and that's where, you know, on some level I believed that's where I was gonna end up. And then it was like, wait a second, I'm not gonna do that. and so we can experience things like that all the time, you know, like the first caller where, you know, I don't know where they thought they were heading in that relationship, but maybe they thought, I'm gonna marry this person and have kids with them. Maybe they were married and had kids with them, I don't know. But, you know, and then all of a sudden this thing happens, and it changes your trajectory, it changes your sense of identity, your sense of who you are, and it can be really like disorienting, discombobulating. When you're in the Tower card, we talked about this in the last episode with someone that was in, and I was using the example of, you know, when the caterpillar goes into the chrysalis, it turns to like goo inside the chrysalis before it becomes the butterfly, right? And the Tower is kind of like, you're in the goo phase. You're not, you know, you don't know where things are going. You don't know where things are landing. And so if you're in a place in your life where you feel uncertainty about your path, you feel uncertainty about where things are heading, you feel that if there's been a loss of some sort of identity, you know, maybe on some level you've been thinking, this is how my life's gonna go, but now it looks like that's not gonna happen, like anything like that happening, of course that's gonna bring up depression. Like, of course, that feeling of like uncertainty, ungroundedness, not knowing, yeah, of course that will bring up feelings of depression. But we have also the Three of Wands, and when I see the Three of Wands show up in a reading, to me I always think about the future. So what's kind of funny about this reading to me is that when I was going through my Saturn return, which is an astrological transit that happens to everyone about every 28 years. So if you're around that age, if you're between like ages 27 to 30, you're feeling the effects of your Saturn return. You don't need to be in that to feel these changes. But when I was in my Saturn return, I was pulling the Tower card like every single day, and I was also frequently pulling both the Two of Wands and the Three of Wands. And both of those cards, to a certain extent, I associate with looking out to the future. So Three of Wands, what do you see yourself, like if things are discombobulated, disorganized, you're not really sure of where you're heading, you're not really sure of where life is taking you, you might just spend some time thinking about your future. You might avoid that because it's when you're like depressed, thinking about the future can be overwhelming or scary. But when this card was showing up a lot for me, I did this thing called Ikigai. It's this Japanese system that helps you, figure out what you're supposed to be doing in life. It's spelled Ikigai. And, I made like these lists of, I think that the things that they say is you find something you're good at, something that the world needs, something that you can get paid for, and something that you enjoy. Like if you can find something that has all of those things, then, that's what you're meant to be doing. And I don't know if your depression has anything to do with those themes or if it's related to other things. But even if that Ikigai doesn't apply to this scenario, thinking to the future, thinking about, if there's a feeling of, you're wanting partnership that you don't have, thinking about what would my ideal partnership look like? When the Three of Wands comes up, I encourage people to think about, what does your ideal situation look like? What does your ideal life look like? And I encourage people to let their minds go wild with this. Like go out on a limb, like go to things that you think are completely impossible. Why not? Don't get attached to them because they may not come into being and things may change. You may end up going in an even better direction. But it at least, even if, just by letting yourself kind of go wild and think about, what does my ideal relationship look like? What does my ideal relationship to myself look like? What does my ideal work life look like? What does my ideal home life look like? All of these different things, letting yourself imagine this, I think can be a very helpful exercise, especially if you're feeling just up in the air, uncertain. And again, like I said, if there's depression there, that can be really intimidating and scary to think about the best case scenario, because the depression wants to tell you, you're never gonna get that. You're not good enough. You're not gonna get there. Other people can do it, but not you. You're not pretty enough. You're not smart enough. You're not thin enough. You're not rich enough. You didn't have a good enough childhood. The depression's going to tell you, you don't have the energy to do that. You're too tired. You're too depressed. It's going to tell you all of those things to prevent you from looking at this life in a different way. And so it can be a good exercise to look at, these potentials, these possibilities. I have another thing. Now my battery's low. Let's make sure that this is still recording. Oh my gosh. Okay, I think it's still recording. This has been the most interrupted episode. What was I saying? Anyway, so we also have the Knight of Pentacles, and I just want to touch on that too, because this feels like a nice, helpful card in this reading too. To me, it indicates that you're, and from your call too, you're saying you're trying different things to help with your depression. With the Knight of Pentacles here, to me it indicates that there's this exploration happening. There's like an exploration within your life at this time that I think is a good thing. And what I will say, as someone that works a lot with plants, some herbalists will be upset with me for saying this, but if it's really depression, it's not just like a feeling of sadness. Herbs can be a support, but they're not going to cure the depression. And this is what I'm about to say too is going to be really unpopular. Medications, I feel the same way about. It may be a support and it may help with the symptoms, but it's not going to cure the depression, because the depression comes from trauma. It comes from some sort of wound that you have within yourself. The chemical imbalance idea is a theory. It's never been proven in any capacity. So I'm not saying that taking herbs or taking medication doesn't ever have its place. Like I said, it can be a support, but ultimately, if there's real true depression here, there's something from your life. There's some sort of traumatic event, some sort of wound, some sort of thing that has happened that is affecting your current experience, that's coloring your current experience, and you can work through that. I think a lot of people look at me and they think like, Kathryn's so positive. Like, I think a lot of people, and people have told me this too, that, when I tell them about my history, about my past, they're like really shocked of the things that I've gone through and the things that have happened to me and the things that I've worked through. And so I know from personal experience that you can, if you keep at it and you have the right toolbox, you can work through trauma. You can work through that stuff. The depression is a symptom of the trauma. Anxiety is a symptom of the trauma. OCD is a symptom of the trauma. All of these different things, they're symptoms. They're not, complete things within themselves. They come from some sort of trauma. That's my belief around it anyway. And there's even there's an interesting guy named Stanislav Grof who I could talk about a lot, but he was one of the first, people doing LSD psychotherapy back in the 60s, 70s. He created this, created the system called the basic perinatal matrices, working with birth trauma. He was one of the founders of transpersonal psychology. He created this thing called holotropic breath work, really cool, interesting guy that doesn't get enough name recognition, I think, for all that he's contributed to the field of psychology. But he was curing people of schizophrenia, with LSD, with high dose LSD sessions. And I'm not saying to go take LSD to cure your depression, although, but he was doing it in a therapeutic setting. It's very different than doing it at a party or at people that do psychedelics at festivals, I don't know how people do it. You're really good at you haven't had a lot of trauma in your life, or I don't know what it is. I don't know how people do that. It would be really overwhelming to me. And that's very different from doing it in a therapeutic setting. So the point of bringing that up, though, is that even something as extreme as schizophrenia can be treated, can be healed. But our current psychological model doesn't want people to understand that. And I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not dismissing the effects of mental health issues. so I'm going to pull an oracle card here for some guidance with these themes. Oh, I love this one for this reading. Potential, and it's just right on theme, isn't it? Potential, right on theme with that Three of Wands there. Don't get bogged down. Don't get identified with, stuck in the muck of this depression. The depression says, you know, you can't do anything. It tells you, you know, it keeps you, it's like this wet blanket on top of you, and it prevents you from seeing clearly into the potential of who you are and what you can be. I don't even like to say what you can be, because you already are that. It's just that you have this wet blanket on you that prevents you from seeing that's and you know, living as that you already are. So yeah, so kind of like the last reader, I'm not really worried about you, caller. I think that I don't see anything in here that I'm like, oh, this looks like it's going to be a rough ride. You know, the Tower is never really like an easy card to navigate. It involves going through a lot of shifts and changes in our sense of self, our sense of identity. But just think to, you know, what does your ideal life look like, and what is your potential? And I want to say too that I'm not encouraging repression of the depression. I'm not encouraging, like, you know, ignoring the depression. If this is like real serious depression, you should be in therapy. You should be, you know, talking to someone about where does this depression come from, where do the roots go, and you know, talking to someone that can help you find different like strategies to work with it, because it can take time, you know. It can take a long time to get through that stuff. Yeah, what's interesting too is the readings, you know, another person could ask the same question, and the focus of the reading would be like squarely on past trauma, like past experiences, on like going to therapy, doing this sort of inner work. But for you, it seems like, yeah, that's just logically going to be a part of it. But it seems like the focus of this reading is really looking to the future and looking to your potential and where do you want things to go. Sometimes that can be enough to pull people out of the depression, to see, you know, this future and this potential, this possibility of where your life could go if you can pull yourself out of it. If you're in deep into the depression, it's going to seem like that's impossible, and it may be at this time, to pull yourself out of it. But it's not going to hurt to think about these possibilities. All right. I really do wish you the best on that journey, and been there. I'm sure a lot of people listening have been there, maybe are there now. Like I said earlier, it's just, what a rough time to be a human being. It's I get so annoyed when I see these people that are like, this is the best time to be alive. And it's like, oh my God. The way that they skew these statistics. They'll be like, you know, it's the lowest percent of the population is in slavery now than there's ever been. But what they don't say is it's the highest number of people on the planet right now are enslaved than there's ever been. It's just that the percentage is lower. The conditions of the people enslaved now is worse than it's ever been. Okay, this is truly the most interrupted episode I've ever had. My apologies. Again, another issue with my camera here. But anyway, if you're alive, it's good to be alive. It's always a good time to be alive. No matter what's going on, it's better to be alive than the alternative. So let's do our card of the day and we'll close out. The universe really seemed against me in this reading. I spilled my tea all over the cards. It got interrupted like 5 times. Let's see what we have here. Ooh, I love this card. The High Priestess. So, is there an area of your life where you're uptight, where you're holding things tightly? And even more specifically, is there your relationship to spirituality, your relationship to the spiritual side of yourself, to the spiritual side of life? Is there a part of you that's holding that tightly, that is believing this? There's like a dogmatic kind of perspective about this is the way that the world is, this is the way that it is. And can you locate that part in yourself? We all have, certain dogmatic things that we hold on to. It doesn't even have to necessarily be spiritual. It could be a political perspective, it could be a social ideology, it could be a belief about human nature, it could be whatever. Like, where are the places in your life that you see? It's tricky to have this level of self-awareness, I think, but are there areas that you believe so deeply that in your mind it's not even a belief system, it's just the truth, it's just the facts of life? Is there's something like that you're holding within yourself, an idea that you have about yourself, an idea that you have about the world? And can you hold that a little less tightly today? Can you hold it a little less tightly? Can you give it some breathing space? Can you let in some opinions or perspectives or ideas that normally you would block out, or you would hear as blasphemous, that you would hear as wrong? Can you just listen a little bit and see, is there anything to this? Maybe you listen a little and then you return back to your little comfortable your comfortable ideas about how things work. But you just listen a little bit instead of just walling it out, blocking it out. And don't just, some of you might hear this and be like, yeah, other people, yeah, you people that you don't listen, I listen. Those people don't listen. Yeah, other people need that advice. I don't need that advice. You might need that advice too. Okay. I have, by the way, on my Patreon, a whole class on the High Priestess card. It's like, I have a class on every card in the Major Arcana. Each of those classes are like 45 minutes to an hour long, and I go into the archetype of the card, the symbolism, what it means in a reading. There's, a lot there. So there's a whole card on the High Priestess. And my perspective on the High Priestess is probably a little bit different than you'll find elsewhere. But yeah, all of those classes, you have access to all of those. You have access to 4 parts of an Intro to Tarot series for $5 only on the Patreon. There's a bunch of other classes on various topics like plant spirit communication, flower essences, poisonous plants, symbolism, the Book of the Dead, all sorts of things are on there. There's something like, I've lost count right now, but like 70 or 80 classes, video classes on there. And you can watch all of them for literally $5. There's no hook. I'm not trying to sell anything else. It's just what I do on the Patreon. on the Patreon, there's also a monthly collective tarot forecast that I put out each month. So if you enjoy these tarot readings, every month I put out a forecast about the themes or energies to keep in mind going forward for the month. There is a $24 a month tier where you get an herbal care package sent to your door each month. There's also a monthly plant journey that is available through Patreon as well. And if you're interested in getting a tarot reading from me not on the show, I do offer those through my website, kathrynsoley.com/tarot. And I also, my big offering, one of my favorite things that I get to do in this life is the Poisonous Plant Medicine course. And I have a new round, level 1 of the course is starting September 22nd. It's a really cool class. We talk all about poisonous plants, mythology, shadow work, trauma. We cover different plants every week. We talk about their historical uses, their medicinal uses, and their energetic beingness. We do plant journeys, plant meditations each week with a different plant. It's a really cool class, and I hope to see you there. You can find out more about that through my website too, kathrynsoley.com. Yeah. Okay, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Oh, also, I'm supposed to say like and subscribe. If you're enjoying 1-800-CALL-KATHRYN, please share this with people. Word of mouth has always really been my best form of advertisement. Share it on social media. Text your friends. Let people know about this. And keep calling in because I'm gonna need calls to keep doing the show, so please call in. Yeah. Okay, everybody. Thanks for tuning in this week, and I will see you next time. Bye.